Hi there, welcome to Create with Copper. In this video we're going to have a look at the zigzag weaves. And don't forget, for more videos like this covering jewellery making techniques and tutorials, just hit that subscribe button. Now let's get weaving. There are two basic ways I create the zigzag weave: taking the weaving wire over either one or two frame wires. I'll cover both in this video, along with variations you might want to try. So let's start with the over 2 zigzag weave. For each of these samples I'm using 1mm diameter base wires, which is 18 gauge, and 0.4mm diameter weaving wire, which is 26 gauge. And I'm going to weave over 5 base wires, but you can alter any of these to suit your project. So I'm going to start by wrapping the weaving wire around one of the base wires a couple of times. This isn't part of the weave, it's just to anchor the wire on, so you can undo it afterwards if you want to. Then I'm going to add a second wire on top of the first and wrap over the top of those two wires twice. And then I'll take the weaving wire through between them. And then I'm going to add in another wire and wrap over the second and third wires twice. And then again come up between them. I'm going to add the other two wires in exactly the same way. Each time I'm wrapping over the two wires twice. And then once I get to the top, I'll take that wire up between the topmost and the next wire, and then over the next two wires, around and over that again. So each of the wraps are twice around two wires. I'll come up between those two wires and then over the next two twice and continue down to finish creating that triangle shape. I can then just weave up and down in exactly the same way for as long as I want to. And that creates the basic zigzag weave over two wires. Now if you don't want such a sharp angle to the zigzag, you can extend the sides to round it off a bit. To do this I've started in the same way as before and woven up to the top of the zigzag. But then instead of coming back down again, I'll take the weaving wire through between the top two wires and then around just that top wire twice. I'm then going to come down and wrap over the top two wires twice again, and then through between those two and continue weaving the zigzag down as before. And each time I get to the edge I'll add 2 single wraps on and then 2 more of the wraps over the outermost 2 wires. And as you can see, that just creates a slightly rounder, more open zigzag. But we don't have to stop there. We can extend these sides right out by just increasing the number of wraps. I'm going to put 7 single wraps on here, just to show you how it looks and the difference between that and just 2 wraps. So once I've got those single wraps on, I'll weave the zigzag up as before, and then put 7 single wraps on the other side as well. And this is how that completed weave looks. So for a different alternative, let's try extending the zigzag weave at the centre. So here I've just anchored the wire on the centre wire, and I'm going to continue upwards with the weave as before over 2 wires twice. And then once I get to the edge, I'm going to continue back down again in the same way as the basic weave, but just for those next 2 wraps, because then I'm at the centre wire and I'm going to wrap just that centre wire twice. Then I'll continue down over 2 wires twice. And complete the bottom of the zigzag weave. We'll just continue in the same way. And here's how that variation looks as it starts to come together. But let's try extending it further as we did before with the edges. So just for consistency, I'm going to use 7 wraps again, but this time around the centre wire. I'll then weave the upper half of the zigzag. And once I get back to the centre wire, I'm going to wrap it 7 times again. Before weaving the lower half of the zigzag. If I continue that weave on for a little bit, this is how it looks. Now I started this video wrapping over 2 wires as that's what I tend to do the most often. But if you wanted to create a more open weave, you could just wrap over 1. Now to make the basic weave over 1, I'm going to start as before and anchor the wire on by wrapping it twice around one of the wires. But this time this will be part of the weave. I'll then add on the second wire and wrap around just that wire twice. I'll then add the third and wrap that twice. And you'll notice each time that I add a wire, the weaving wire is going around it in the opposite direction. So for the 4th wire, the weaving wire is coming up over the top and towards me. And for the 5th, as it goes over the top of the wire, it's wrapping away from me. And once I get to the top, I can just bring the weaving wire up between the top and the second wires and then wrap that second wire twice. I'll just continue wrapping up and down the wires in exactly the same way. So each of the wires are wrapped twice over the top, but each time I'm just going over one of them. I'm not wrapping them together. And you'll find with this weave that not only does the weaving wire look a little less dense, but the base wires tend to sit a little bit further apart as well. And the finished weave looks like this. Extending this weave is fairly simple because you're just adding extra wraps to the single wraps that are already there. Just for comparison purposes, I'm going to make the number of wraps the same as for the over 2 weaves. So each of the edges actually has 6 single wraps on it. Apart from those extra wraps, everything's exactly the same as for the basic zigzag. And to extend this even further, to make a comparable number of wraps, the edges are now going to have 11 wraps on them. And then the zigzags woven between. For your weaves, you can use as many wraps as you like for the extensions. And actually most often I tend to use odd numbers rather than even. These examples just use a couple of options to show how the resulting weaves will look. And here's how the weaves with extended sides look. And in the same way as for the sides, extending the centre is simple with this weave. You're just adding extra wraps onto that centre wire rather than the 2 for the basic weave. So for these samples, I'm putting 6 on the centre wire. And then to extend it even further, I'm putting 11 on the centre wire. And the two sides are again woven in exactly the same way as the basic weave. And here's how these finished weaves look. I hope that gives you a few ideas for the zigzag weave. There are many variations you can make on these samples. For example, where I've woven twice over each step, you could weave just once, or maybe even 3 times. You can of course weave over more base wires than the 5, or perhaps even 4 or just 3 wires. And you can use some of these variations together. For example, you could do a basic zigzag weave to make a V shape, but then just extend one side rather than both sides, to make almost a scallop effect. But have fun experimenting with the weaves and creating your own variations. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please press the like button below. Don't forget you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching. See you soon.